Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity podcast. I haven't changed my voice. This isn't James St. Pierre. This is Peter Lant speaking. You might have realised that because I don't sound like the other two. We're on episode 80 today, and we have a very, very special guest who I will introduce soon. But before that, I'm going to introduce you to our usual host, and I'm going to go to James first because I know Paul likes going second. So I'll see if James says anything controversial that Paul has to then sweep up like he usually does when James introduces me. So, James, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well indeed. I will say nothing controversial. I'm not in my boudoir.
I'm not today either.
As you were for the Steve Cotter episode. I'm just here. I'm looking forward to speaking to the guest today. I've kind of followed him on Instagram for quite a while now, and see him training a lot and doing a lot of training, and we'll talk about that obviously. But don't know the man behind the training. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this. It's gonna be a good one.
Excellent. So what about you, Paul? Follow up on that.
Yeah, I know. Well, usually before we press record, James is just swearing and it's horrific, the language. But as soon as he gets a very professional face on, as soon as we press record,
he's like the guy.
I was going to try and confuse the listeners.
He's like the guy in Father Ted, the drunk guy who's like really, and then he comes on and he's like, hello, hey.
Exactly. No, I was going to confuse all the listeners, try and do a northeast accent, but then I realised that would just embarrass me. So Sean's tried it before as well. It doesn't work. Yeah, it doesn't work. I'm not good at that. I'm fine though, by the way.
Speaking of that, our guest today has made me feel nostalgic because he's got a nice picture of Hexham behind him in the River Tyne, which is lovely. And this is because he waddled Hadrian's Wall once. But yeah, so today we have a guy who I first came across when he signed up to do my an intro to kettlebell program, and he already knew what he was doing anyway, but he just signed up to do it just because he was a bit curious, just and wanted to say hello and stuff. And it wasn't very daunting or anything, but when I added him into the WhatsApp group, his WhatsApp picture was a picture of him pulling a lorry with a harness on. So I was like, oh, okay, no pressure. But anyway, and he's now being trained by Finn Bartulin, who was on the podcast a while ago. So we have with us today, it's not, what's his name? I was going to say his name. What's the name of the guy from Anthrax? Scott Ian. It's not Scott Ian. It's not Scott Ian. It is Mr. Ben Morris, Mr. Year Burpees on Instagram. How are you doing, Ben?
Yeah, not too bad. Thank you for the warm intro, fellas.
I tried to pick up a Mini. It's not quite as impressive as a lorry.
Yeah, it was you and two other guys. Well. Yeah. So anyway, Ben, how are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Pleasure to be here. It's given what we're talking about, it's really fascinating for me as an exercise. So looking back at the roster of speakers you've had, to find myself in that mix is a bit blimey. And I'm used to listening to you guys and going, oh, what's coming up? And listening to that intro going, oh, what's coming? Oh, that's me. Okay. But other than that, yeah, it's on top form.
Yeah, you get used to it. You get used to listening to yourself, honestly. But,
so
there's no. We've told Ben that there's no pressure that he was the immediate one after Steve Cotter as well. But there you go.
No pressure there at all.
No, none whatsoever. So anyway, the reason why we asked Ben to come on was because he'll have an interest in, because Ben's he's a trainer, and he's really interested in kind of the mental health side of things. He'll talk about this when we get into it. But Ben basically sends me feedback about the podcast because he's an avid listener, and we have some kind of like interesting conversations over WhatsApp. So I just said the other week, like, do you fancy coming on? So Ben, if you want to give us a little bit of potted history, you know how this goes because you're a listener.
Yeah.
A potted history of where you've come from and what have you, and then we'll get into talking about the things that were kind of mentioned before we started recording.
Yeah, lovely. So I'm sort of in your demographic, I guess. 45 this year. I was a fat kid at school. Not massively interested in sport. Found my own way to it at 16. Took up rugby, got into that. Had some age group success. Got into my 20s, drifted a bit. Came back to rugby late 20s, early 30s. Started playing rugby league as well, and got some amateur rep experience in that as well. Similar sort of time, picked up. I'll come back to the day job around that. Picked up my rugby league coaching badges, some strength and conditioning coaching badges, and PT stuff, and kind of expanded from that. And one of the things I guess that sort of came through from an early experience of that and sport, and then moving around was where the mind fits into it. Particularly coming to it a bit later, I didn't have a lot of preconceptions of what I should be able to do. But looking around at people who seem to have all the physical attributes, and yet some days they could deliver and some days they couldn't, and that got me really interested in it. And then over time, as I moved away from rugby, I tried the MMA and BJJ thing, and realised that having not done any martial arts at all, picking that up in your 30s with no background isn't going to be an interesting challenge for you. And I liked getting sweaty with men. Should I admit to that in public? Anyway,
well, you
rolling around with blokes on the floor was grand, but I wasn't in a place where I was going to put in the learning around it to get really good at it. And you go, actually, this is disrespectful to the sport. It's disrespectful for my teammates, and it's going to get me injured because I'm not getting any younger. And then I thought, the natural extension from that is, well, let's get into indoor rowing and strongman, which was a good thing to do in your 30s and pick up. Yeah, natural Venn diagram.
That's an interesting combination, that indoor rowing and strongman.
Yeah. And it's that, I'll talk about that in a bit, but that tendency to just add more all of the time, just throw it in and you just put the two together and do 4 sessions a week on a really good indoor rowing program. I got to sub 7 on the 2K, good speed on the 1K, sort of top 25 in the global rankings, but to get top 25%, sorry, to get higher than that was going to put in a lot more effort. Not top 25. I'm only 5'9". That's not going to happen. But simultaneously running 5:31, and getting some good 260. I think I topped out 262.5 on my deadlift while running 4 sessions a week on an indoor rowing program, and eventually, so the day I pulled that, I got on the erg and rode 44k. I did the full marathon on the erg that evening. And so it's funny what you can do, but they don't sit comfortably together on that constant chip away at that. And then I've mucked around with running and stuff. Having done London in 2004, I then did no long distance stuff. I did a 30 miler in 2019, as you do. Got to the finish line. The guy said, "Oh, you do many of these?" No. What's the furthest you've been before? Oh, London. Was that last year? 2004. Like, get out. you're dangerous, but not in a Top Gun kind of a way.
Yeah.
And so there's that, and then in the day job I work in HR, which I don't tend to admit to too much in public, but on the back of that, so loads of performance stuff coming through from the personal bits and the coaching stuff, which I love, and helping people figure out what's going to work for them. Doing the HR, similarly, performance, much more in the remedial space and the constructive, if I'm honest. And then over time, getting into seeing more people coming forward with mental health issues, which led me to Mental Health First Aid England, qualifying as a mental health first aid instructor. And I've been doing that now for several years. And I've also been delivering that via the RPA. So James will be looking for the acronym HAMMER at some point. The Rugby Players Association, so I've been working with professional top flight rugby clubs to deliver mental health first aid with their players and staff, as well as in professional services. And so that sort of brings me to here.
That's cool, actually. I know Bath Rugby had a mental health expert working with them who left. I remember seeing it and thinking that's really interesting because it's huge pressure, isn't it? And and you just expect people, like you were saying, like elite sports people, you just expect, well, it comes with a job, you should be able to deal with it. And it's like, well, no, because you didn't you're doing it, you're doing it because it's your passion, and you don't realize that you're going to have all these problems with it, So yeah, that's quite interesting.
There's also on that though. Professional sportsmen, you expect them to be really good, but you don't come out of the womb dribbling a football, do you? For the most part,
yeah.
even Ronaldo working relentlessly on the skills. A lot of this stuff, certainly at the proactive side, is skill based.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're skills we can adapt, we can learn, and we can get stronger at if we practice them. But they kind of go in that grubby little corner of stuff that we expect we should be good at because, well, all the stuff that brings us to here.
Yeah. So, so the conversations we were having over WhatsApp and what have you were really interesting. Like I say, that's why it was kind of like, actually, this would be really good to talk about on the podcast. So you said you got into HR, which your family and all that were really proud about, apparently. We're talking about this off there. But we were saying this, it used to be, back in the day, it used to be personnel, didn't it? And you were just managing people into jobs and this and that and what have you, and pay scales and all of that sort of stuff. But it's become a hell of a lot more than that. And you've gone, and you said you started to realize that people, like you get into the technological age and all that, and then there's more to do, or you can, working longer hours, being available on a BlackBerry at the time, and then getting into iPhones and stuff like that. And you've got your email app on there, and then people can get in touch with you at any point. And then all of a sudden you're overwhelmed because you've got kids to look after, and you've got a family to support, and you've got to try and have a social life and all of that. So all of a sudden everything is just there, and people feel under pressure. So, and you were saying you got into this to kind of help with that, and then get deeper into it. So what's your observation? What are the common issues that come out? Because I think a lot of people listening, and even let's say even us guys will have the same issues as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of commonality across it. We can find ourselves talking in different languages about similar sort of issues, or issues that we're familiar with, and so sometimes, while they're not exactly the same, a shift in our language and the way we approach stuff can make a breakthrough for people. And you know that with coaching, I've seen you do it, Pete, and James. I've read some of your stuff and some of the feedback from your clients. That ability to adapt your message to respond to what you're getting back from your client is an example of that kind of thing. You're not fundamentally changing what you're getting them to do, but you're changing the way you present that in a way that resonates with them, and they're able to push forward from it. And that, in your space, comes from an understanding of what it is we're trying to achieve, which, when we come back out into our broader life, is, I think, there was one study I read that said something to the effect of modern humans, in the course of one day, have more stimulation, more information, more data thrown at them over the course of one day than medieval man had over his entire lifetime. And all of that is all of the time, and we're filtering that, we're processing that, and a lot of it's happening at a level that we're not aware of, but it's still there. That's still bandwidth that's been occupied by processes that have been run. And if, to use that analogy, it's a bit like having your computer open. You've got 25 windows open in your browser. You've got 15 programs. They're all running. They're all requiring energy. Whether that's your computer processing speed. For us, that's mental and physical energy that's required to do it. And so we combine that with this natural inclination, as we talked about, to add more. Yeah, we need to change something, and we forget the change bit, and we just add a solution in. And it's really difficult. It's really challenging to stop for a minute and go, actually, is there something I can more usefully stop doing that would get me closer to where I want to be?
Yep.
Before I try and add a solution in on top of all this other stuff I've got going on. And it's sort of 20 odd years ago, you'd see it in the time management space. It's managing energy as much as anything else. Is you can be really good at effectively managing something, but do you need to be doing it at all? Is your baseline question, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you get that with thinking from like a training program aspect. You see some people who are doing too, like you said, rowing and strongman and this and that and what have you, and it's like, okay, so you're getting tired and burnt out and everything. What can you What can you take out of what you're doing at the minute to get better at the things that you want to get better at, rather than trying to do everything? Like James says this a lot as well. You can do anything you like, but you can't do everything. So pick one or two or whatever. But yeah.
Because I just asked Ben. I mean,
Sure.
you in your intro, you mentioned the I think the phrase was, I might be wrong, I think it was mental health first aid, or something around that. How did you first? It's not something I've ever heard of before. So how did you first hear about that and then get involved in it? And what is it? What if you can kind of explain for people and for me.
Yeah, sure. I'll start with the last one first. It's a bit like physical first aid. Your preservation of life, prevention of further harm, and get someone who knows what they're doing. Long and the short of it. And with the mental health side of that, there's a good chunk of that is removing and reducing that stigma that gets in the way of us getting help. A lot of it is, once you get under the surface of that, there's lots more you can do to build it at the front end. How do we stop people getting bad enough that they need experts? So a bit like prehab, rather than waiting until they're broken and then rehab. Similarly to physical first aid, 2 days with me to become a mental health first aider. I back myself, especially over short distances. I'm pretty good at what I do, but two days with me is not going to replace 13 years of medical and post-medical training to turn you into a psychiatrist. You're not going to become a psychiatrist or a counsellor, but it's that, if being able to see someone in distress and have the confidence to go, "Are you all right, mate?" And ultimately, when we strip away there's lots of knowledge that goes with it, and there's lots of specific scenarios, but underpinning it all is reconnecting us with that humanity, the ability to just go, I don't need to be scared about asking you, how you doing? How I came to it was increasing numbers, 20 odd years in HR. I could tell you, first time I had somebody report in sick with being signed off with a mental health issue, phoned in, said I've been signed off with depression. And I still remember some 18 years later going, shit, what do I do? Literally, I know the word ish, but I have nothing else from here on in. And then over time, as we've got a bit better about talking about this side of our existence as humans, we're in that space where we have a bit more awareness of it as a concept. And so more people coming through, and I had a couple of people at work presenting with some serious, significant issues, and coming to me because you're in HR, you know about people, help this person out, as well as my wanting to help them, and going, there's nothing in my life or my training to date that puts me in a place that I know what to do now, and I'm fumbling my way. How do I upskill myself in this? And then, I've done a master NLP practitioner, done certs in CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance and commitment training, flow state, mindfulness, all of that sort of stuff. So all around the performance, but specifically with so when it's wrong, what does that mean, and what do we do? And looking for the confidence in that. And that's what led me to MHFA. So research, found it, and went, actually, you know what, I could become a first aider myself, or I could become an instructor and train other people to be able to help with this as well. And my organization backed me to do that.
There's been quite a dehumanization over the last 2 years in the workplace, obviously because of COVID and the fact that we have to follow government guidelines around the kind of way we behave, etc., in order to keep control of the spread of the virus. But what that's led to is a kind of atomization of a lot of people, and we're not saying that you always have to be best mates with the people you work with when you're in the office, but at least you have human contact.
Yeah.
And now very much it's screen based, whether it's Zoom meetings or whether it's just via email and phone calls. People are no longer seeing each other for those incidental meetings. There's always something that's being discussed, and you're not going to meet someone around the kitchen sink or anything like that for coffee. You're not going to go downstairs and have lunch. You're not going to see them on the train. You can't just walk into HR. You have to make appointments, etc. What are you seeing as the main struggles that businesses are facing and the implication that's having on the individual, and what do you think businesses can do to try and navigate that, because they're at the thick end of it,
I mean, we come at it, some of the things that keep us well, keep us performing well, keep us healthy as well as performing well are our, my sense of competence. Do I feel like I know what I'm doing? Do I have the skills, the understanding, the tools to be able to do it? And can I reach into my memory bank, for example, where I've been able to do this, and where I can't? That sort of leads me to go, I'm not sure I'm happy about giving this a crack. My sense of control or choice, you can't control everything in life, but how much choice do I have over this situation? And there was a really interesting study back in the 70s of dishing people electric shocks out to people. And so presented it and said, look, here you go, James, you've got a choice. You can have a shock now. It's on a scale of 1 to 10, probably about a 6. And you can take that now. It'll hurt. Just press the button if that's what you want. Alternatively, you can have a shock that's somewhere between 0, so you might have nothing at all, or 10 at some point in the indeterminate future. And the vast majority of people opted for that. I'd rather have the known unpleasant shock now than go for the, I might be better off, but you know what? I know what I'm getting into, so I'll take that and I'll take it on the chin. And interestingly, those people also demonstrated fewer markers of stress afterwards, because they had that certainty and choice around it. And I think a lot of what we've seen in the last 2 years has chipped away at that for us. I'm a hermit, really. So social distancing didn't trouble me too much on one level, but I really objected to not having any choice over that. And it's really funny, just coming out of isolation for COVID myself recently, it wasn't so much that, on balance, I probably didn't have that much less time out than I would have done anyway, but I had no choice over that. And that's what was niggling at me in there. And the other one's connectedness. That sense of, do I have some sort of connection with people, and doing it over the phone and doing it remotely is something that's still quite alien to us. And so there's new skills around that we need to learn. Plus the impression management, being able to see yourself on screen is again bandwidth being occupied by, what do I look like? What's my background? What's my setting? And that's worse for people who, some of the studies show it's worse for women than men, and also for new starters in an organization, because it's all about that impression management. Where do I sit in the organization? That's not to say men don't experience it, but commonly, and it makes sense, doesn't it? If you've got no reputation with people, and all my experience is this, and all the time I've got to be on, and it's that again, it's channeling energy, challenging thought and focus into that. So I think for what can organizations do to help people, the same as you guys do with your with the people you're coaching, is can we reference it in ways that make sense? Are we clear about what's important, and listening to your athlete? Some of us might go, I'm not an athlete. What are you talking about? You go, you are. You're giving it a crack at this. That puts you in that camp. Helping with that sort of language in there. But that listening to that, to go, do you need to know why we're doing this? Some people do, some people don't. And if you do, then let's fill in those gaps, because if we leave that silence, people will fill it with their own noise. So we can take a step to fill it, to give people that confidence around that. But the challenge for whether you're a middle manager or whether you're a CEO of an organization or whether you're a coach is it all takes effort. And when you're already tired, when you're already fatigued by this, it's I can't you just do it. Just crack on and do it, will you? And there are times and place, particularly when you're in the middle of a crisis, you go, just crack on, we'll fill it in later. But it's that, can you stop, catch your breath? Let's debrief from that. What can we learn from that? Why did we do what we did? Maybe not why, because that gets a bit of a defensive thought, but where did that fit in? Where's that going with our intention on here? Where does that fit in the plan? Like when you get injured, when you're working with a coach and he goes, all right, so working with Finn, working towards to comp later, damage myself, you go, fine, we'll adapt the plan. So now our timeline is going to stretch. And it's that, I think, for organizations as much as it is for individuals, is, are we modifying our expectations in line of what we're getting? Giving it a go. Are you responding well? we kick it up? Actually not responding the way we wanted to, do we need to dial it back a bit and so modify our expectations there? Does that answer the question?
Yeah, without doubt. I mean, we spoke briefly before cameras came on about people just, I spoke about this with Steve Cotter last week, which was, when people get healthy, they take control, and they often just say no to things. They basically just say, right, I've had enough of this job. I'm going to move jobs. I'm healthy. I'm empowered. And you must deal with that a lot as well, as people just go, I'm quitting. And a lot of time they'll quit for a good reason. There are times when environments are toxic, when they're overly demanding, they don't care about the individuals, but that often there's never been a dialogue before that happens, which could have basically kept that person in the role. That person could have felt happy. The business would have had a more productive individual because they felt happy, and there wouldn't have been this kind of churn. And you must see a churn in certain industries or certain times of year or certain roles because of burnout and things like that. So what do you think the response needs to be from both sides?
It's like any relationship, isn't it? And Pete talked about in a couple of shows back, is that being open about what you need from a relationship. And both sides, not every relationship is going to last forever, and not every person needs to fit with another person. But if you can be open with what I need from this, both as an employer or as a mate, with your mate or with your employee, it's here's what we need, here's what we can do to help you. What do you need? And how do we cross those, get as close as we can to close that gap between the two? And it might be we reach a point where you go, I can't help you beyond that. But at least we've had that honest bit. And over the course of my career, talking to people who get to that stage where they go, no, that's it, I'm done, I'm out of this. And I've done it with a few relationships over my life, I guess, is, if we'd just known what's been troubling you, and frequently it's been something that's been sat there and it's niggling and niggling and niggling and niggling until it gets to a point you go, that's it, I've had enough. If we'd known back here, it would have taken a really minor shift there to maybe change the trajectory of this. I mean, we might have still got to this point, but it might not have been such a miserable experience to get to that point. And there was
I suppose you're having to manage people as well, because often people leave jobs because of people, not because of the job. They may love their job, but they don't love the people they're working with. And so from the top down, there may be this ideal scenario, the way the company wants to be, but then there's that communication within there that the middle managers all the way down can communicate that sentiment as well, because it's often you get people who work, we've all worked for someone, I'm sure, who will pull crazy hours, and they're willing to do that. But then there's other people going, well, do I do those crazy hours as well? Is my job, will I lose my job if I don't do exactly match my boss, or if I'm seen to leave early, or if I pick the kids up or stuff like that? And this all kind of builds as a kind of sediment of mental stress, which eventually can just make people snap and leave jobs or whatever, or come to me or come to a mental health person, because I deal with a lot of mental health people in jobs, because they're like, I'm burnt out, I'm dead, I need some help,
Yeah.
And
and it's that you're looking for an outlet, aren't you? You're looking for something, and neuroplasticity, our ability to lay down new connections in the brain and continue to learn and develop, continues well into later life. It gets a little bit harder, but it's still possible. But we know aerobic exercise helps with that. We know good sleep, we know good nutrition. So talking to guys like you can help us with that, but it doesn't address the underlying issues in this part over here. Maybe they're not underlying issues. It's just because I got so busy at work, I've crushed all of that. I squashed all that down. I'm not doing my training, so I'm feeling a bit more lethargic. Because I'm feeling lethargic, I'm getting a bit more bleh. And because I'm a bit more bleh, everything now is just hard work, and it gets that. And we talk about stress container. It just gets fuller and fuller and fuller and fuller. And until it eventually overflows. Now, hopefully, it overflows in a short-term bit. That you go, some balance in there will just restore it. But what are we doing to open the tap at the bottom of that to stop it filling constantly?
So I've got a few things down here. because there was something you said earlier about, like, you know, people say like, oh, how are you doing? You go, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah. And that's a common thing, isn't it? And it's like, no, how are you, like, basically now what I want from people when I ask them how I'm doing is to actually tell me. And I might be able to help, I might not, but at least it gets it, even if they just by saying it to someone, they'll probably go, oh, do you know what? I haven't told anyone that, or I haven't, like, it might be the smallest thing, but they'll go like, God, that made me feel better because I've been keeping that inside. So that's number one. And then the thing about the thoughts, being overwhelmed and the number of thoughts. I did a meditation course a few years ago, and I think they were talking about, even over the last 40 years, the number of thoughts you have every hour. I've just Googled it now, and it says like 6,000 thoughts a day. I don't know if that's true or not. But 40 years ago, that might have been 2,000. So it's a hell of a lot more because we're permanently switched on. And I've done it with people in meditation, got them to just shut your eyes for 2 minutes, and count your thoughts. And they have like 14 or 15 in 2 minutes. And most of them are like, what am I doing with my eyes shut here? Is everyone looking at me? You know, you get paranoid, right? Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of, that brings me to the question is, how do you identify it in somebody? So you'll be identifying it, people at work or whatever. How do you identify these sorts of issues in friends or family? And also, how do you identify it in yourself, which is big for people, because we're very good at lying to ourselves about stuff like this, aren't we? And saying, oh, there's not a problem, and convincing yourself there's not a problem. So how the hell anyone else is meant to know? You know, so how do you recognize it, and then how do you get people to recognize it in themselves?
I was talking to a guy beginning of last year, coming off an absence, a lot of issues with anxiety. And while I was talking to him, I said, look, I'm really sorry we're talking in these circumstances, but you know what? When you get to the other side of this, and you will, what the other side looks like, neither of us can tell, because we're exploring that. But you will get to the other side of this. You will almost certainly have a better understanding of yourself than most people ever have cause to get to. And it's a real shame that well, it's a bit like a movement mechanics, I suppose. You know, you go out for a run. It's supposed to be the most natural thing in the world, and then you develop plantar fasciitis and shin splints and hip problems and back problems. And it's only when you then start looking at mechanics and go, yeah, you're not supposed to move like that, really. That might be why you're getting some of these things. But it's only when it becomes an issue that you actually start working at it. And it makes sense, because all these signals we have, we're tuned to look out for the things that are different.
Yeah.
So right now we're all sat here. We're probably not thinking about how the polo shirt feels on my skin, or how your hoodie feels on your skin, until someone mentions it, and they go, oh, yeah, and it drifts into focus to go, okay, what's that all about? How does it feel? So mindfulness with a small m, it doesn't have to be a mindfulness practice, but just actually that sitting as a practice to start listening, it gives you more ability to tune into your experience. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? And then that starts to speak to that inquiry, that curiosity about what makes me tick. What do I look like on a good day? And maybe rather than mindfulness, you start with that and go, when I'm 10 out of 10 and I am unstoppable, you can't handle this, baby. What does that look like? Yeah, what's a 10 out of 10 look like, feel like, sound like? How do I know what 10 out of 10 looks like? Other end of that, when I just want to pull the duvet over my head and make the world just stop and piss off and leave me alone, what does that look like? And then see if I can figure out what the rating scale between there and there is. And now check in the morning, pick this one up from a sports psychologist who works with the British Olympics squad. Lovely guy. It's 100% mindset on that. So you start with your baseline, and you can that in an exercise in itself over a course of a week or a fortnight. Just what's my baseline look like? What does that feel like? What am I getting from there? Once you've got that established, is how do I rinse 100% of that? And it gives you two things. One is it makes you more attuned to where I'm at today. Am I struggling? So if I know I'm struggling or things aren't firing, it's okay. So what do I need to do to change that? But more importantly, in the here and now, because emotions follow action, rather than worrying about all the things I'm not, if I can make the most of what I am and what I can do, then I get that sense of competence because I can see, go, right, so today I'm 7 out of 10. If I hit 7 out of 10, I can log that at the end of the day, success. And now I've got a marker of success. And now I've got a reference point in here that I can refer back to in there. Like when you're training with Paul, you get to the end of the cycle and you go, well, yeah, of course I can do that, because that's what we've been doing all the way along. We've just slightly been ratcheting it up from there. Doing it in other people, it's helpful if you know people. You get to know your clients, for example, because you see them a lot. And so when they're out of character, it doesn't necessarily mean there's something wrong, but just actually checking in with someone and going, how you doing, Pete? You seem a bit flat today. Sends 2 messages. You may not want to talk to me about that, but what it does do is establish that connection to go, I'm interested enough to have noticed and to have said it. And at some level you go, I'm Matt, and bam, we get that sense of connection starting to build back in.
I think that works in a group setting as well, because me with the guys, when we're, especially the 7 o'clock in the morning guys, because everyone's very similar. And you'll just ask how someone is, and we'll tell each other if we're like, oh, this is happening. And it's good because you get to see it in other people and go, well, it's not just me.
Yeah.
Everyone has, like, it's one of those things. Everyone has like 6,000 thoughts a day or whatever. There are nobody's having a thought that you've never had. And then, like, but you can think, can't you? Like, oh, I'm thinking this about myself, whatever, or about my situation, and I'm the only person who's ever had that. And it's like, no, you're not. It's like, how long's the human race been here? Everyone's thought that at some point, whatever it is.
Actually, really, really interesting bit on that. Yeah, I mean, it's not a new thing either. Yeah, that comes up a bit as, oh, this is just modern life and we're all a bit snowflakey and we're not as great as generation. And you go, maybe. The expression black dog for depression, for example, Churchill referenced it. It comes up from the works of Samuel Johnson and he was referencing it from common parlance at the time. The work of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is based in a lot of Greek philosophy. Ibn Avicenna or Ibn Sina, medieval Muslim cleric and medic, identified a lot of this stuff as well. The Vikings in the Norse Edda, the Havamal, there's a couple of verses in there about the importance of being able to share your heart with a mate. Care gnaws the heart if there is no one to whom your whole heart you can't disclose. That importance of being able to just shoot the breeze with someone, take the mask off for a minute, and you go, ugh, resonates through the years with it. And we lose some of that. As much as social media is amazing, enables us to connect on so many different levels, but it takes effort to take it from a superficial one to get a group of guys together, crack open a drink, pour a bottle of something that James fancies, and just shoot the breeze.
I'll tell you what, I don't know if it's if any of the rest of you are like this, but I don't do social conversations on the phone or Zoom. I just don't do it. I will talk to you guys, but we've kind of got a purpose and there's a momentum to the conversation, isn't there? But it's, and it's shock horror, everyone listening. We're not on the phone to each other every day talking about stuff. But no, but with, I'm not one of these people. I'm either discussing something that's like interesting or I'm in my own head.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't do incidental conversation on the phone unless someone sat next to me and we're just chilling out and there's a bit of air between and space. Then I'll probably open up and talk about random stuff. But if I'm doing a Zoom call, I'm just like, bang, what are we doing? What's we talking about?
Yeah.
It's it.
I get that on I've put a couple of posts out the last couple of days and I've started getting people commenting with like long comments and opening up a conversation. I'm like, oh, I wish I hadn't put that post out. Because it takes time and you have to, and it's nice to think about it, but then you're like, I've got to type this out. Like I did it with Ben the other day, so I just gave him a voice message on WhatsApp because I was like, I cannot be asked to type this out, so I'm talking to you.
It's the biggest challenge, unless I'm incidentally out doing things, I would quite easily end up being hermit.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a guy thing or if it's just...
Anyway, there was something we wanted to get into. Number one, I mean, the Vikings, obviously, it's weak to tell your friends how you really feel, isn't it? Because the Vikings were a notoriously weak race. So if the Vikings can talk about the feelings, I think anybody can, right?
Yeah, it's why I love dropping that one into conversations with blokes. Because it's a look, if you're hairy bloke with a horny helmet and an axe can talk to a mate about his feelings, it might just be feelings about beheading someone, but it's still
you know what? It's like, oh, when I chopped that bloke's head off, I felt really I felt like I was gonna cry. I felt really bad. I mean, he might have kids and a wife.
But I always bring this up, don't I? Which is about, like, most guys are really difficult to coach. That's why I mainly have women in my classes, mainly because they're the ones coming out. It's because mainly it's women who are actually reaching out for help. And I don't know if I don't know if I'm rare. All of us have coaches. All of us reach out and get further education. I don't know if that makes us rare within our gender, or if it's anyone else experience that, you know. Because you reach out, don't you? You know, you've got Fion as your coach.
Yeah,
well, you're very capable already, aren't you?
Yeah, it's the, you know, I could and I have coached myself with limited success, because you can negotiate with yourself a lot easier. You can rationalize it and hide from it, can't you? And it's I'll tweak that. If I'm accountable to somebody else, you know, you have a fool for a client if you coach yourself. I think certainly the stats speak to blokes being rubbish at opening up. These men seem to have higher incidence of suicide. You know, as the number one killer of men under 45. It's second to heart disease above that. Alcoholism, drug dependency, basically self-medicating a way out of issues, and a lot of that, I think, is because we just. I'm a bloke, right? So thinking about my feelings, I've got hungry, I've got happy, I've got angry, and there's something else. That one. I'm 45. That's not quite so often. And you kind of, if it doesn't fit into one of those brackets, it's I can't talk about it because I can't even describe it.
Yeah.
And so part of the education, I think there's a Richard Feynman quote about that. A good chunk of education is about learning the terms to be able to talk about what it is you're trying to learn. And so for blokes, is that I might really want to talk about what's going on, but I just don't have the words. And you end up, and James, you might have seen this in the kids. You know, when they're trying to do something and they just can't, you get really frustrated, you slam it and walk away. That's massively common for blokes. Yeah. And it's that kind of, I'm so, I don't know what to, and then you get someone really well-meaning go, you just need to talk to someone. Thank you very much.
Yeah. That's really interesting, actually. That is really interesting. Yeah, no, that's up there with, you know, you just need to move more and eat less, or do this or do that. It's like a simple, just go and talk to somebody about it. It's like, I've tried.
I think I've had this recently with it's a very practical, physical manifestation or application of what you're talking about. But my little boy Xander, he's not 3 yet, and he talks now and then, and he says bits, but he's obviously not got the language of an adult. So we had a thing with him at nursery the other day, or Steph, my wife, did, and they said, he just seems to sometimes he gets really frustrated because he can't express or say what he wants to say. So he gets really, and there was a couple of times, I think, hopefully this doesn't sound too bad, where he's maybe like bitten a kid or something, or bitten someone, and he just gets really wound up because he can't express what he wants to say. And I suppose that's obviously he physically can't express what he wants to say because he's a little kid. But I suppose from what you're saying as well, from an adult's point of view, if you don't have the ability to express what you're thinking or what you're feeling, or the outlet to maybe have someone that you feel you can express that to, then you just become very frustrated and potentially, I suppose, become aggressive or become withdrawn, or, like you said, self-medicate with, alcohol or drugs, or shut yourself away, or whatever. So it's really interesting. It's really interesting.
That's where it's good. That's where it'd be good to talk to someone like Ben, because you might not be able to articulate what you're feeling, but then Ben can draw it out of you, right, by asking you questions, and then you get to be able to, because you might not even know what it is. So then you get like a coach or somebody, to draw that out of you by asking open questions just about what's going on. And that
it's interesting how men retreat and how women seem to prop things up, because I deal with a lot of women, and what I noticed with my female clients is they are just managing a ton of things.
Yeah.
So they tend to be doing like that. They've retreated in a different way by almost being the person who does everything, all the things to hold things together. Whereas with a lot of the guys, they'll retreat into work, they'll retreat into the things that they feel their zone of influence.
Yeah.
And the zone of influence is different for a man and for a woman.
Have you ever seen the Mickey Flanagan sketch where he talks about he goes out with his mates and his wife stays at home with her mates, and he gets home and his wife's like, "Did you ask Phil how Susan is?" And he's like, "No." And she goes, "What? You didn't ask him how Susan is?" Like his wife. And he goes, "No, I didn't even ask him how he was." Anyway, we've probably got about 10, 15 minutes left. And we haven't talked about what we originally said we were going to talk about, which was comfort zone stuff.
Yeah.
So this is something I've particularly been, and we were talking about this on WhatsApp, and I've been particularly interested in it because I was saying things like, some coaches and that would be like, right, you just need to get out of your comfort zone because nothing grows within it. And most people, well, a lot of people are already overwhelmed. So getting out of their comfort zone is just going to be like destroy them because they need to deal with being within it first, or they feel like they're out of it all the time. There's also the idea of where is your comfort zone? Because you can think like we said with training with Paul and Finn. He's obviously Finn's coach as well, so you'll get a bit of this from Finn. Is you feel like you're maybe training towards it or outside of it, but actually you're not. You're coming somewhere near it, and you feel like you're outside of it, but the coach is looking, saying, you're not. You think you are, but you're not, because it's actually further away than you think. And you were saying about like you need to get out of it. You need to get out of your comfort zone periodically, rather than smashing it all the time and trying to be out of it the whole time, which leads to overwhelm. So it's a massive subject that we've got about 10 minutes left on. But I mean, what's your kind of view on that? Because you'll be on both sides of this, right?
Yeah, there's a couple of different angles that I think you can take on that. The Paul and Finn of just constantly just expanding and nudging without ever crossing the line on it, or the Paul, perhaps more in Paul's sweet spot, the math approach, where you keep that steady rate of work here and you expand, and basically you get more efficient at working. You get more for the same output, and you do a high intensity block, but then you retreat back from that, and so you push out the limits of your comfort zone without redlining it for too long. Mark Felix, remember Christmas? No Christmas without World's Strongest Man, the Tub of Quality Street, obviously. Going back a few years, Mark Felix banging out deadlifts for reps, and he smashed it as he still continues to in his 50s. But I remember in one of those interviews, he said, he did really well, Mark. He said, yeah, I should have rested earlier. And you could see the interview and what? And basically it was that. I went for an extended set for the first block, and I went too far. If I backed off 1 or 2 reps earlier, I could have rested a little bit less and got more reps out by doing that. So establishing a base camp, acclimatizing, like Matt Shaw talked about when he was summiting.
Yep.
You establish that base camp, you acclimatize there, and then you push on from that. So you get comfortable here. And then mentally you've got that coming back into the comfort zone space of, I can reference having expanded a little bit. So I can see that I've come from sea level to this level, and now I know that I can grow. I get comfortable here, and now I just nudge up a little bit more, and I've got that reference point to refer back to, seeing how I'm pushing on and kicking on from that. But it's that performance kind of curve. You need to get that, the stress in it. With no stress comes no growth. So there's got to be some stress in there to stimulate the growth from it, but it's got to feel in your, and this is where it becomes an art for the coach, of it's got to feel a stress that is uncomfortable enough that will stimulate growth, but not so much that I'm just going to go and collapse and fall back in on myself. Or if I do get over that bit, then we back off from there, and then we have that ability to going back into the physical world, that hypercompensation. So a stretch, we strain the muscles, we've pushed what we can do, and now we get that chance for the super recovery, and now we can push on again from there. But it's as art as much as it is science, because everybody's different. Everything that leads us to this point is different for all of us. So even if we were identical twins, obviously it's possible because we've got the same hairline, Pete. We've both had different lives to this point. So everything that's going on up here is going to be different for us, because all those connections are subtly different. The genes are there, the mechanics are there, but the application of those has shifted over time. And so our fuel, the right fuel mix for us, is going to inevitably be different. And that's what makes it art as much as it is.
I was talking to I think Ben, is he froze? Is he coming back on?
Don't know.
Just keep going.
Yeah, we'll keep talking. I think I hope he might be able to hear this. He might not. I was having a conversation earlier with one of my members, Edith. Well, Ben's back. It's
He's back. You're back.
You haven't missed it.
Not again, James. I'll edit that
again. Yeah, that's right. I was having a conversation. It was only 10 seconds. I was having a conversation earlier with Edith, one of the members, and I was talking about, she was training. I was talking about what I've been doing with Paul and things, and said about the RPE scale, or the rate of perceived exertion, and how Paul's kind of view of it is, the rate of perceived exertion is obviously how hard you perceive that you're working in relation to your max effort. But he says, well, I'll tell you what your RPE is, because it's not really about how hard you feel you're working. It's about your proximity to your maximum and how much you can actually do. Yeah. So I was training today, and I had to do 10 sets of 8 and 8, say, a couple of days ago, and that felt hard. And at the time, I thought, I've got to do 10 sets of 10 and 10 in a few days' time. And at that time, in your mind, you think, I don't think I'm going to be able to do it, because the 8 and 8 felt hard. But then you get to the 10 and 10, and you can do it. But it's that whole kind of thing of how close you actually are to your max, as compared to how close you perceive you are to your max. And most people, even when you are fairly well trained and you're fairly used to doing this, you really do underestimate your strength or your ability to endure and to continue, don't you? Which I think is then where we get coached, and where you get coached, Ben, as well, is that thing whereby I probably would have stopped at 8. I wouldn't have gone for a 10. It's one of those, there's someone else saying to you to do it. It kind of almost sets the stall out, and then you have a challenge and you have a target and you go for it. And then when you get it, you're kind of, well, yeah, of course I can do it. I know I can do it because you just finished it. But, 2 days ago, it felt impossible. So that whole kind of, probably as individuals, as it's very difficult for us to actually assess where the outer images of where the outer sort of boundaries, of our comfort zone actually is, isn't it? Because we're always probably erring on the side of protection and safety, and probably the edges of the zone is we're seeing is only actually 80%, or probably less than the 100% of the whole thing that we potentially could reach.
Yeah, I think so. It's more common for people to stop early than it is for, particularly in the coaching space, to have to rein them back. There will be times, particularly with really hard charging people, where you have to go, actually calm it too much, just back that off a little bit. It's fewer and further between, I think, than we think. But yeah, it's a bit, it's that acclimatization to it, isn't it? That again, the difference between getting in a bath that's red hot, and then you go, I just sticking my feet in and go, yeah, okay, that's not scalding me. But you still have to go, is it, isn't it? And then you sink a little bit lower and go, oh yeah, no, that's too hot for that. But or the other way around, you sit in the bath and then turn the tap on and let it fill up, and you just go, I could probably tolerate a higher degree of heat on that, because it's already starting. The change in temperature is a lot less than just stepping in. But it is a challenge.
How hard, how hard something is and how you feel is really a modern luxury, isn't it? Really, it's kind of, it's the only time in history where people have had a chance to reflect on that. Really, you probably just didn't have a choice in the past, and therefore we kind of get in our own way. and it's probably surprising we don't really have a language for it either, because kind of probably just go out, you want to hunt for something, you either catch it or you don't.
Yeah.
And you push through it until you do it, depending on how much risk there is.
Yeah, it's the pressure thing, isn't it? Of like, I can't do that, and I'm not capable of doing that. That's far out of my comfort zone. But if someone held a gun to your head and said, "Right, go on," then you'd probably be able to do more than you thought.
Can I ask, Ben? Can I ask you a question in terms of kind of relating to training, I suppose, because you have like your career, if you like, is in HR, and you train outside of that, and you obviously train seriously still. And I think you said you were looking at competing now in like kettlebell sport in GS. And I think also, I don't know if you're on the same kind of cohort as Lauren Emery, who's, do you know Lauren?
I've seen Lauren, yeah, in the group. I was on the cohort before.
Okay, yeah.
Amazing results again.
Yeah, so Lauren's working with Finn at the moment, and she's now looking to step up to kind of competing in in a proper kind of kettlebell sport meet and things. But what do you? So you obviously use training. I know you've been involved in training, all your life, but as someone who has a proper job and does training on the side, as it were, what do you see the role of exercise and training in your own health, mental health, the way it balances out your life? I mean, can you sort of let our listeners know about that from your point of view?
Yeah, for me, it's my happy space. The weight, it's an old article now, the Henry Rollins one. The iron is always the iron. It doesn't lie to you. Some days it'll come off the floor like it's on wings. Other days it'll feel like some cheeky bugger's glued it to the floor, and you won't lift it. But 40 kilos is still 40 kilos. The barbell is still the barbell, and there's something really simple about that. And it strips out all of you're able to park all of that stuff and just go, I have to engage with the kettlebell to snatch it. Yeah, gave it a go with a half snatch on the 44 the other week just to see if I could. But even that as a casual effort was you've got to focus. And that focusing in on a task, bringing all that attention down onto one thing, and you can have too much of a good thing, but for a short block of time to just cut that, to hang it up by the door with your coat and come to just this narrow bit is really powerful mentally. The physical exercise enables me to push and process all those hormones that have been released, and stops the fatty acids that have been released into the bloodstream being stored as adipose tissue, which will lend itself to depression anyway. So using the fuel, and basically we're designed to move a bit, not all the time, but we're designed to move intermittently over. So throwing it in is good for us physiologically. There's a clarity to it, there's a purpose to it, there's a beautiful simplicity to it that's just basically, for me, it makes me a nicer person to be around. Because if I don't have that as an outlet, then I can be an absolute shitbag. And that's not who I want to be. That's not how I want to show up in the world. And it doesn't have to be exercise. If music's your bag, then go do that. Give yourself permission to do what matters to you, what enables you to go, when I'm doing what I do, then with who I want to do it with, I can show up in a way that's important to me, for the people that are important to me, and do that. Be you, but be a better you. Is my approach to this.
No, that's fantastic. I one of the things I was going to mention earlier when you said about when things feel like they're getting too much, and when stress builds up, there's a kind of a natural human reaction to kind of, I suppose, throw ballast over the side, and just get rid of stuff. And many people, in my experience that I kind of meet, they get rid of the training. For some people is an easy thing to get rid of, isn't it? And we have it all the time at the gym, where you get someone who'll send an email or they'll talk to you and they'll say, there's so much going on at the moment. Work is stressful. Life at home isn't great. Money's a bit tight. I'm not sleeping well. I'm going to stop exercising, and then when everything's better, I'll come back to it. And I can never really, I can empathize with what they're trying to do, that reaction of just trying to dump something, so take something off of their plate. but I always find that it's the worst thing to try and take off your plate at that time, because of how because of how I feel about exercise and training, and how you've just articulated how you feel about exercise and training. That kind of dumping that and from my experience, it rarely makes things better.
And I know from my own experience of having dropped it and gone through those patches and not doing it, that I know that doesn't work for me. I know it's a temptation, and when everything's getting on top, you do that, don't you? You look for stuff to shed, but it's am I throwing away the things that are going to make a difference? Is this bit that I'm throwing away going to help the boat go faster? Or is actually that'll give us 1%, but actually if I drop that would give us 20, and I could still be doing that, which will enable me to keep that 20% speed going. Different ways of looking at it, really.
I always know with the idea, James, I don't know, Peter, because you guys work with clients, whether or not have you ever said to a client, you know what, I get it, but I don't, we're not saying I get it, saying I don't get it. I don't think that's acceptable.
What I usually say to people is, right, what are you going to do at home then? Like if they say I'm leaving, I'll be like, right, okay, because I had a few before Christmas, and I said, what are you going to do? Because they've inevitably got bells or a pull-up bar or whatever, and I'm like, right, what are you going to do? Tell me what you're going to do. Tell me what your program's going to be, and that's cool. And you're going to carry on your own. One of the ladies who's now come back to me said, online lady, she listened to the Tracy Rifkin podcast that we did. So she bought Tracy's book and she said, I'm just going to do that. So she left and then didn't do it because she didn't have anyone telling her to do it. And she came back and she was like, she was like, oh, it's harder than you think, like to motivate yourself. And I was like, yes, it is. I know. And people think we're motivated, but we've got people who rely on us to be the motivated person. So that's what provides the motivation, right?
Yeah.
You've got people relying on you. That's what provides the motivation when you've got kids to be a better person or to want to live longer and all of that. And you might not want to do that if you haven't got any kids, but then as soon as they come along, not that I've got any kids, but as soon as they come along, you're like, James put a post up about that the other day. I've got to be a better person. I've got to be a better man. And I've got to be a good example. Dave Whitley was talking about it. You've got to give up all those things that are going to just try and hold you back. And if they're holding you back, they're going to hold your the next generation back as well. So it's massive. So yeah. Are you glad you asked that now, Paul?
Yeah. I'm just generally interested because sometimes I feel very understanding to people, and other times I feel utterly confused why that would even be an option.
Yeah.
No, I've got a message actually from someone this week that I need to go back to and talk to, and I just this conversation just made me think, and I've thought it before, when people kind of say that, but having had this conversation today, I may act slightly differently, not in a judging but I may just actually have a call with them and actually try and have dig a bit deeper and have that, rather than just say, yeah, no problem, we'll just put your membership on pause for 2 months. I might actually try and have a bit of a conversation around, what they're going to do instead and why that is. And if they think it's actually going to make things better, or, just not from a financial point of view, but it just be interesting to know the inner workings of their thought process,
There's a bit in motivational interviewing, which the John Brading, the precision nutrition guys, are big on. But that most of us have the ability to hold the reasons for and the reasons against in our own head. And what we commonly do is try and then tell people what they should be doing. But what you're describing there, James, is gets to articulate for you why you should be doing it, and let me counter that. Because we figure it out as we talk it out. So by getting into that sort of thought process, you get them pulling through speaking more to the reasons why I actually should be keeping doing this rather than jettisoning it. Maybe the result may still be the same, but at least you're connecting them with what matters to them, which from what I've seen of you will sit more comfortably with you as a coach and a man too.
Yeah, I think what it does. I think we should probably wrap this up actually, because we've been on for a while. But with that, I think asking that question gets them to think about it, because if someone's overwhelmed and what have you, then they're going to be like making an emotional decision. I'm just going to get rid of that because it's easy. And then if you actually sit down and think about it, which we've just been talking about, sit down and consider it and stop letting those thoughts run your life, and then say, actually, what do I really think? You'll make better decisions. Then you I make allowances here to still be able to do that, which I think is huge.
Last one on that, Pete, before I do, how you feel changes what you look out for in information and how you process information.
Yeah.
So if you're doing it with yourself or with someone who's really is getting them out of that, physically out of that space, but tapping into the physical. So using the vagus nerve, using the breathing to slow the breathing, send the signal back up the nervous system to say, it's all right, guys, we got this, calm it. Then enables that logical center to kick back in, whereas otherwise overwhelmed by all those neurochemicals going, no, logical brain, piss off, we don't need you, we just need the fight or flight stuff. You channel that slower breath, calm it down. We're now in the relaxed phase, and now the logical brain kick in, and we can get more into that future planning space.
There you go, simple as that.
Brilliant.
So Ben, if you want people to find you, it's up to you. How do they find you? Where are you?
I'm loitering on the internet. I had a bit of downtime to create some space in there, but I'm on Insta as Yay Burpees. I didn't talk about the burpees. This is kind of my thing. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a counselor, but I love helping people, giving them a thought, giving something they can work with and figure out your own stuff. Seeing somebody, if I can give you a nudge that makes you open a door to something amazing. So if I can help, if you want to give us a shout and just say hello, they're there. I've got a blog site, but I haven't updated that for a while. There's a couple of interesting bits on it if you're that way inclined. On festusmonkeyarmy.blogspot.com. The name from a curry-based conversation, but it's interesting. Share some thoughts.
Funny you should mention monkeys, actually, because when you were talking about easing into a bath earlier, I call that a monkey bath. Yeah, like when it's too hot, you're like, like that. Anyway, James, any last thoughts on that?
No, that was just really interesting, and it was actually nice to that followed Steve Cotter, because we were talking. I think Ben mentioned there. I did write it down, where he said emotion follows action, and we kind of talked about that a bit with Steve as well, and then just mentioning the fight or flight thing at the end there. Which we were talking about last week quite a lot as well. So really interesting. It was lovely to meet you, Ben, and to not just see you snatching and pressing and squatting, and but actually to hear you as a person was fantastic. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, James.
Paul, what about you?
No, it's been a great conversation. Really, I like these conversations where we can kind of dig deep into a variety of subjects, and I think this will be certainly an episode that I would send to my clients or pass on to a few people I've got in mind, because I think I think this is actually what's often really relevant to people. As much as I love kind of all the sets and reps, etc., this is the stuff that gets people in the gym and doing things. It's these kind of discussions, whether they're in a group or internal. And if you have an answer to some of these, then you're going to be setting yourself up for success. I think, I thought it was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for coming on.
Well, what Paul says there, I think it's kind of a starting point, isn't it? When someone's like, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to be fitter, stronger, and healthier, and I want to be a better person, and all that. It's like, well, start there. That doesn't mean join a gym and all of this sort of stuff. It means just think about it first and get a plan involved.
Before this chat, I was recommended to someone who someone I know recommended that someone who's just moved into the area come and train with me. So I reached out with them. There was a guy, and he said, "No, I don't need any help. I'm going to train myself now. I know exactly what to do." So it's been quite relevant actually as a conversation. It's quite interesting. I'm thinking of ways of going back to him now, see if I can persuade him to be a client.
Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully he's listening and he'll be like, oh, no, I'm going to get a phone call. But anyway, right. So as usual, if you like us, press like, share. We're on everywhere you can. Well, you're listening, so you know where we are. It's always funny that, isn't it? But yeah, please, honestly, if you think this will help somebody as well, this is the main thing, right? Because we say, it'll help us if you like and share and tell your friends about us and stuff like that. And that is brilliant, but that's not what it's about. I mean, obviously, you help us, you help more people, because stuff like this is the stuff that we think people need to hear. All the stuff that's out there about like, just do this, just do that is great. But actually, when you delve deeper into it, it's this sort of stuff that we really need to consider. So yeah, if you like this, like it, share it, tell your friends. If you share it with one other person, that doubles our listenership. So that would be lovely. But anyway, Ben, thanks for coming on. It's been a pleasure. And we still need to go for a coffee, by the way. So I'll talk to you about that on WhatsApp, because that'll be great. Yeah, you've got yours there. So yeah, thank you for listening. We appreciate you all, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com, or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Odyssey.